of like asking a fish to describe water. And there are some concepts that are so ingrained in him and so embedded in him that he doesn't really understand them himself. He's just, they've been there for so long. For example, take the rule that he follows about asset turnover. Quote, "No real investor likes to trade. It is never pleasant to part, probably forever, from an old friend," unquote. Okay, well that probably sounds like something that Warren would say, right? Or it sounds like something that Ben Graham would say. But it's not. That is from a book called Bond Salesmanship by Townsend, which Warren read when he was 7 years old. So, and he asked for this book for Christmas, by the way. And whenever he reads a book, especially as a child, he usually read them 4 or 5 times and memorized them. So some of these ideas have been so ingrained in him from an early age, it's hard to know whether they're innate, whether he invented them, or whether he picked them up from sources like this when he was very young. But he got a lot of reinforcement at a very early age. Now, for those of us who didn't, the question is, what in Warren's papers and mental files will help us be better investors, even though we can't be the next Warren Buffett? I did find some things, but let's first start with reviewing. There's 4 concepts that you hear over and over that are kind of the basics of value investing, and they are intrinsic value, and especially applying the Phil Fisher qualitative investing concepts to intrinsic value. Second, ignoring the Mr. Market manic depressive behavior. Third is the performance drag of too much turnover and too much diversification. And fourth is the Ben Graham margin of safety concept, which arguably is the most important idea ever developed in investing. And all of these are very important, but when I studied and spent so much time with Warren Buffett, what I actually saw is that he invests and applies his investing. He uses these concepts, but what he actually does is a little bit different. And so what I'd like to do is take you on a little bit of a journey using a specific investment that I did not write about in the book. It was cut for length. And it illustrates principles that I talk about in the book, but it's a little bit too technical and at too high a level to have been put into the snowball, which is for more of a mass audience. And also, just as an overview, I should just say that so much of Warren's success has come from just entraining himself into good habits, and it's worth just saying that because, he always says that the chains of habit are too light to be felt until they're too heavy to be broken, and he's talking about bad habits. But it was Aristotle who said that we are what we repeatedly do, and that excellence is not an act but a habit. And Warren is a creature of habit. He's the ultimate creature of habit. His first habit was hard work. And I write over and over in the book about the fact that he was at the Securities and Exchange Commission digging up documents before they were electronically available. He was down at the State Insurance Commission in the bowels of the basement looking up files. He was knocking on doors of businesses, talking to the managements when they were saying, "You're a pest, go away." He was sending Dan Monin around the state buying up shares of National American Insurance. He was always thinking and working, and a lot of his work was not obvious. It was not repetitive or routine. What he was doing was he was always thinking, what more can I do? Especially what more can I do to get an edge on the other guy? Now, importantly, I know a lot of people will point out that a lot of what he did you can't do these days because either the information is so available electronically that everybody has it, or it's insider information that would be illegal to use. But the principle of the hard work that he did is still the same. That I was talking to somebody earlier, and we were just sort of talking in awe of how hard Warren Buffett worked, and the fact that most people would not work that obsessively, but for those few who do, there's a reward. And the main thing that he worked at was learning. The guy is, as Charlie Munger puts it, a learning machine. And his learning has been cumulative. It's been a tremendous advantage to him in business. He's got this mental file cabinet that's been built up starting when he was a very small child, sitting in his stockbroker father's office, reading the financial statements and descriptions and studying of thousands of businesses in dozens and even hundreds of industries over and over and over. This is really why when people call him with a business proposition, he can say yes or no instantly, because he's got that file cabinet in his mind that is so deep. It does help to have a photographic memory or near photographic memory, which he has, but at the same time, that knowledge, that learning is the second part of what makes him Warren Buffett. And the learning was cumulative. I think that's worth mentioning, too, that he's chosen to learn in a field where the knowledge adds and builds on top of each other. And so I think we could all be better investors for knowing that. Well, up to this point, there's not any great mystery to it. I think everybody knows that Warren Buffett has, or everyone who's read The Snowball knows how hard he's worked and how much learning he's done. But there are three other factors to his success that I would like to talk about and focus a little bit differently than he normally explains the way he invests, and that is handicapping, compounding, and the margin of safety. These are three concepts that work together. He uses them in a slightly different way than he would think of describing them publicly. They're all discussed in the book, and I'd like to take you through a little case study on an investment called Mid-Continent Tab Card Company. This was a private investment that he did in his personal portfolio, and just kind of show you how I saw him invest based on his personal files and what he actually does. And then I'll update that to the present day. This company was an outgrowth of IBM. And as you all know, in the 1950s, Warren did not use computers, but he was very aware of them. IBM was the only computer company of any size or importance at that time. And Warren's Aunt Katie and her Uncle Fred had decided to invest in Control Data, which was a startup company that was going to compete with IBM. Katie's brother, who was Bill Norris, was founding Control Data because he wanted to create a business. He thought IBM was slow and bureaucratic. And Warren told Katie and Fred not to invest in Control Data. He said to them, "Don't do it. Who needs another computer company?" And those were sort of his famous last words. They invested in Control Data anyway, and they made a huge amount of money. And what was notable about this incident is that Warren told them not to invest because he actually knew a lot about IBM. He'd been studying IBM. Since 1952, it had been in court embroiled in an antitrust case for being a monopoly. And Warren studied its financials, even though by then he'd already declared IBM outside his circle of competence. But he felt that even though IBM might have to be broken up someday, that its monopoly was so overwhelming, and of course he likes monopoly businesses, that to compete with it would probably be futile. So what happened was that IBM did actually settle with the Justice Department. And as part of that settlement, it was required to divest of a business making tab cards. Now, I can't really see you very well, but there must be a few people who could throw their hands up in the air that are old enough to know what a tab card is. Can anybody know what a tab card is? Yes, I see two people. Okay, that dates me. Okay, so a tab card is, before computers were digital, they actually read off of punch cards. They were called mark sense cards, and these were big decks of cards that had holes punched in them, and they would be stuck in the computer, and they would be read manually or not manually, they were not electronic, they were sent mechanically through the computer. So this company was formed because IBM had to divest of this business. It was an incredibly profitable business. In fact, because these cards were trivial compared to the mainframe computers that IBM sold, it marked them up to get more than a 50% profit margin. This was IBM's most profitable business. So Wayne Eves and John Cleary, who were two friends of Warren's, saw that IBM was going to have to divest in this business, and they thought, we're going to buy a Carroll press, which was the press that makes these cards, and we're going to compete with IBM because we're based in the Midwest, we can ship faster, we can provide better service. And they went to Warren and they said, should we invest in this company, and would you come in with us? And Warren said, no. Well, why did he say no? He didn't say no because it was a technology company. He said no because he went through the first step in his investing process. And this is where I think what he does that's very automatic but isn't well understood. He acted like a horse handicapper. And the first step in Warren's investing process is always to say, what is the odds that this business could be subject to any kind of catastrophe risk that could make it just fail? And if there is any chance that any significant amount of his capital could be subject to catastrophe risk, he just stops thinking, no, and he won't go there. And it's backwards the way most people invest, because most people find an interesting idea, they figure out, the math, they look at the financials, they do a projection, and then at the end they ask themselves, okay, what could go wrong? Well, Warren starts with what could go wrong. And here he said, a startup business competing with IBM could fail. Nope, sorry, and he didn't think another thing about it. But Wayne Eves and John Cleary went ahead anyway. They started up this business, and within a year, they were printing 35 million tab cards a month. So that at that point, they needed to buy more Carol presses. They came back to Warren, and they said, we need money. Would you like to come in? Okay, so now Warren is interested, because the catastrophe risk element of the equation is gone. They are competing successfully against IBM. So he asked them the numbers, and they explained to him that they are turning their capital over 7 times a year. So a Carol press costs $78,000. Every time they run a set of cards through and turn their capital over, they're making over $11,000. So basically their gross profit on a year on a press is enough to buy another printing press. At this point, Warren's very interested. Their net profit margins are 40%. It's like the most profitable business that he's ever had the opportunity to invest in. Notably, people are now bringing Warren special deals. It's 1959. He's been in business for 2.5 years running the partnership. Why are they doing that? It's not because they know he's a great stock picker. They don't know that. He hasn't yet made that record. It's because he knows so much about business, and because he started so early that he has a lot of money. So this is something interesting about Warren Buffett. By 1959, people were already bringing him special deals like they're still doing today with Goldman and GE. He decided that he would come in and invest in this company, Mid-Continent Tab Card Company, but interestingly, he did not take Wayne and John's